everyone to Otterbein University. It's so good to see such a healthy, hearty crowd here at this opening reception for Interwoven, which is a solo exhibition of Anita Maharjan's work. Yes, please. As many of you know already, Anita is a Columbus-based artist, so she's considered local. But she's originally from the Kathmandu Valley in Nepal. Anita is part of a community of people in Nepal who are known as the Newars. And they ruled the Kathmandu Valley until the mid-19th century when the Shah dynasty came and sort of took over the valley, unified the country, and established the language of Nepali as the country's national language, and sort of unified the people under that language. And you might wonder, why am I saying that? What does that have to do with a contemporary artist who graduated with an MFA from the Columbus College of Art and Design? I mention it because the Newars have a very long, many-century history of being well known as the artists of the valley. In fact, they continue to this day to be to create some of the most coveted traditional works in all of Asia. People, particularly members of monasteries from places in Tibet, in China, in Japan, from all over Europe, actually actively go to Nepal to work with Newari artists to produce work, especially for commission works, especially for their own purposes. So, although a contemporary artist, Anita really comes from something which is much deeper and has much greater roots in Nepal itself. So I just wanted to sort of make that point before we talk about her accomplishments to date here in the United States. So she came in 2008, so not all that long ago, to pursue higher education in art. And she'll talk a little bit more about that, but she earned her bachelor's degree in fine arts from the University of North Texas, and she holds an MFA with a teaching certificate from the Columbus College of Art and Design. She taught for a while as an adjunct professor at CCAD, and she currently teaches at Fuji's Academy, which is the first school in the United States specifically for refugee students. She has exhibited her work in the United States, in Texas, in many cities in Texas and Ohio, and she has shown in Columbus at the Roy G. Biv Gallery and also at the Columbus Museum of Art, and now a solo show here. She she actually was a painter predominantly early on in her career, and she received Best of Show for a large-scale painting that she did in the 13th annual Art Connection exhibition in Texas. So it was quite an accomplishment. She also received the 2017 Creative Women's Award at the Ohio Art Fair. And for those of you who don't know about the Fine Art exhibition at Ohio State's Fair, this is an extraordinary show which receives over 3,000 entries. Typically, it's a juried exhibition. Multimedia, multiple medias, it's professional, amateur, and that's just the fine arts show. So that happens in August, at the end of July and August, so if you have a chance to go, it's definitely worth it. She has been featured in the Dallas Morning News, Columbus Underground, and Columbus Alive, as well as the Dispatch. As you can see, her weavings are bold and sculptural, with a presence that dominates the space and often feels more like installation art than woven sculptures. The works are deftly created in the way that she works with the existing colors and the materials that she uses, but she also gives additional meaning through paint, which she applies to the surface. So as you're looking at her work, look closely and see if you can make some discernments between the commercial industry waste that she works with in terms of her materials, but also what she applies in terms of her fine arts training. So thank you so much, Anita, for being here. We really appreciate having your work on our campus, and we also appreciate the fact that you were willing to come and give a talk about your work. So Thank you.
Thank you, Janice, for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for coming here this evening, in spite of the nasty weather that we have in Ohio. So as Janice mentioned, I am from Nepal. For those of you who don't know where Nepal is, it's between India and China. It's a small country. This is the Kathmandu Valley, where you can see, it's showing different. Sorry. This is my hometown. From the valley, you can see the mountains, and it's beautiful. So we have different, before I begin introducing about my work, I'd like to give a little background about the culture itself, because my work ties a lot with my culture. So we have different caste system in Nepal, and I belong to a certain caste system. We're known as Newars. Newars are the original people from the valley, and we live in a close community where the houses are mostly attached and made out of bricks. And we have our own cultural dress and music and language. We also are very good with our foods, very delicious food. We're known for making the most variety food in the whole Nepal, and I think my friends would agree with me. So more than 75% of Nepalese involved in some kind of agriculture, especially my people group. Newari people are known for growing rice, barley, and wheat, all sort of crops. So we have a lot of agricultural waste products. What do we do with those waste? One of the things we do is we make mats, and these mats are known as sukul. As you can see, the ladies harvesting the rice. After the harvest of rice is done, then the waste product or the straw is used to weave the mats. So in my culture, the primary weavers are the women, and men are the ones who actually market them for selling. Woven mats are used for sitting, dining, and bedding purpose. Actually, if you stack like 4 or 5 of the mats and make a bed, you get a good night's sleep. As you can see, she's actually my neighbor on the top picture. You can see the straw on the left side and the mat in the process of weaving, and they're sitting on the woman stool. And you can also see on the below eating while sitting on a mat, which is very common. So this is the natural recycling in our culture. So as Janice mentioned earlier, these are some of my earlier work from around 2009. It's quite different from what you see today here. I got into art as a painter, and I wanted to study art in the US. Studying art, however, is not common, especially in my culture. I did come to the US in 2008 to study art, which was again going against the cultural norm. This earlier work shows women in their domestic space. Sorry. So it's not showing. So these are quite. Oops, sorry. Did I go to the one? Okay, sorry. And so I was doing a lot of work with women in their domestic space at the beginning, and around that time I was feeling homesick and also going through a lot of cultural, emotional, this cultural shock. And I'm sure a lot of you who come here go through that as well. And I was overwhelmed by that around that time. And then I took a fiber class, and I was encouraged to incorporate some of the fiber into my work. Therefore, I started experimenting and weaving using plastic bags. So this particular style of weaving is, again, unique to my Newari culture. And so I borrowed the traditional weaving technique from my culture and tied it together with the Western commodity materials that you can find every day and made use of it. So in this way, I was able to fill in that bridge or the gap between two cultures. For me, it was like taking some from my own culture, originality, and something from where I live now became the bridge. So it kind of developed from there, a little bigger, but I was using more, sort of treating it as a canvas to paint on it, or manipulating a little bit shapes. So now talking about the process, this type of weaving doesn't require any sort of loom. You basically, at the beginning, you hold with your feet, and as it gradually develops, then your body weight will hold the mat itself, and that's how you work. And so Nepali women historically have less access to education. My mom and aunts, they never went to school. So weaving in my culture is done by the woman. It's like social daily activities, and it's where after the household chore is done, then all women gather together and chit chat and weave. It's such a communal activity.
So were those family members?
Yeah, my neighbors. Yes, they're my neighbors. I don't know, for some reason I didn't get my family.
Well, who is the young woman in purple?
Guess who is it? It's me.
Yeah, that's
I
beautiful.
have to make sure this is the proof that I actually So, on the other side of the world, here I am in my studio weaving by myself. So every now and then my husband joins, but he can't stay for too long because I just keep weaving for a long time. And so I try to create that familiar sense of communal activity, that community in my weaving by watching very dramatic Bollywood movie or songs. Because it's very nostalgic for me. Because growing up, you always watch with, Saturday comes and everyone at 2 p.m. you're watching a movie together with your friends. So that way I try to create this community, kind of communal activity for me. So in 2015, I got married to my husband, who is right here, from the US. This took my cross-cultural experience to another level. Yeah, I visited Nepal after 8 years, and I had a very reverse culture shock. The things they do back home, a lot of things changed since I've been, and I'm sure a lot of my friends who have been back after a long time, they realize that too, they notice that as well. So the question of where I belong and where my home felt very complex then, and still now. So home is here, home is back home is in between, or home is sort of nowhere else. Kind of question always comes to us. So I continue weaving bigger and bigger. This is one of the bigger round piece that I've ever done. And this this is the piece that was shown in Columbus Museum of Art. Again, my work speaks cross-cultural experience. It also introduced the art, craft, and labor of those unprivileged women. And I represent those women insisting that the work they make is very powerful and has a significance that represents our cultural pride. So what goes behind the curtain, the process? I go collect the bags, Kroger bag from the Kroger donation boxes. Sometimes people look at me like a weirdo, who is this? Just trying to steal the bags. And my husband and I make many trips. Sometimes if I don't want to be the weirdo, I'll make him. And then we also go to different hotels and get a lot of the discarded bed sheets that they don't use it anymore. And then, cutting into the strips to create the volume to braid it. And then if it's a bed sheet, then if I'm thinking about the color, then I dye it. And then, braiding goes after that. So there's a lot of steps before actually weaving takes place. So this was one of the first big piece, and it's made out of small pieces. You can see this upstairs. I joined them together, leaving a lot of tassels, because I was not trying to make the mat itself, trying to create that structure, but leaving some tassel on it, and also treating some as a canvas, but other as just having the raw material appear true. It gradually developed from there to making little bigger pieces where making the raw material appear as the palette itself rather than painting on it. And also letting the gravity control the shape versus how much I can control it. I'm very interested in the transparent white paint. This represents taking on the culture around me. I blend into American culture. When I speak, people notice that I am from a different background right after I speak. So the transparency will always be there for most of us who are not from here. This piece took another shift in my work because at the beginning I was making more like rectangle or square-like shapes, and this is the first piece where I was able to create different shapes. And so when I was making this piece, I was thinking of different skin tone of people in a diverse group of people, living together. I think Columbus is such a friendly city, and just, if you walk by, you see so many kind of people in the grocery stores or wherever you go. And so each piece is a personification of different multicultural people living in a community, and this is America. So sometimes I take the small pieces from here and then try to make, I made like big shapes where it can stand by itself. And I like the idea of what goes on the wall and what comes off of the wall, what can stand on itself.
So you talked about the change in how you started thinking, usually went from the Wari to Nepali, kind of as you became more comfortable with like the new language, the new ideas. Do you think that there's anything that gets lost in translation as you kind of make that switch in your head?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. Because even when I was telling someone earlier, when I'm talking to to my family back home, sometimes they laugh, just make fun of me in a good way. Like, like, how are you speaking? Look, you're just mixing Nepali and English words. And sometimes it's so hard for me to come up with a particular specific word, so I just have to pause. And even other day, I was, just talking to baby and in like talking English or Nepali, and my husband said, "Can you talk in Nepali?" And I paused for a while because I have to think what to say in Nepali because it's been a long time, and definitely that's where the question comes. As I've lived here more, will slowly, fade away, or just the question of the home again is very overloaded.
I guess part two of that is your work has been changing over time.
Yes.
As the languages are changing in your head.
Uh-huh.
Do you feel like anything has been gained or improved because of that mixing of languages in your head?
Yeah, well, more than mixing the language in my head, I guess those things plays a lot in what comes at the work itself, right? And so definitely the shift of works has come through the thought process that's in my head. The Interwoven, the series, that is more of, I guess, the transitional phase where I'm thinking a lot about assimilating to the mainstream culture and how slowly, everything feels like a mixed for me, and that piece speaks to that a lot, I think. And in future, I think there will be a lot of pieces that will, again, there will be a lot of layers of different thought process.